Artificial intelligence. Is it conscious? Will it ever be conscious? And how the hell are we going to know when it is? Thank you for coming back to Of Ants and Gods, where you are, joined here by myself, my little microphone here and my peg. A bit of a gimmick that wasn't meant to stick, but unfortunately might just clip. All right, so today we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence, because that's such a novel topic in these days, is it not? And I want to talk about it under predominantly, I would say, namely two headings. First being essentially that, the first heading being, again, the first question, is AI conscious? When will it be conscious, and how are we going to know? And then the second one sort of being more in terms of what are the actual risks associated with AI as it is, and associated with bringing about AI, potentially what it could be if it were conscious, perhaps even if it weren't conscious. So, okay, basically, under the first topic, what I wanted to talk about mainly was, AI. And so we're going to open with a thought experiment from 1980, which is the Chinese room experiment. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, the Chinese room thought experiment, from 1980, so, 46 years ago now. And the thought experiment essentially posits, if you had two rooms and someone was, there was a Chinese man living in a room, and he was writing things in Chinese and passing the sheets out, and he was passing them to, through a door to the other room, where there is a robot, essentially. There's a computer, a complex computer, but a computer nonetheless, that is essentially, it's been calculated, it's been trained such that it can actually respond in a way, in terms of text, that just seems utterly human, to the point where that person doesn't even know in the room across from them in this experiment that it's a robot. He just thinks he's speaking with someone, maybe someone else who's Chinese, right? It understands the language so perfectly. The question then arises, how is that person supposed to know that the robot in the other room isn't conscious? How are they even supposed to know it's a robot at all? Now, you might say, oh, well, that's silly, because like nowadays we have ChatGPT, and it may not be quite at that same point where we wouldn't be able to tell, but like, if you were receiving text messages from Instagram from ChatGPT, there might be some giveaways, but ultimately, I would say a lot of generative AI is very good at, quote unquote, understanding the linguistic nuances of conversation. Just responses. It can even do sarcasm if you ask it to, within the perimeters of the particular app, which is something we'll get to later, in terms of different apps out there that don't have as much perimeters, and maybe that's a risk that we're running. So, it's pretty good at that. But here's the thing. Modern psychology suggests that upwards of 90% of communication is nonverbal. So it's comprised of facial expressions and bodily gestures. You know what I mean? If you were just listening to my voice, you might be getting a very different picture of who I am and how I feel about things. So that's why, on another matter, I suppose why online dating doesn't work as well. But that's my own opinion. That's a topic for another day. So yes, 90% of communication being nonverbal. Then what if now we're getting to a point, and what if there was a point we could get to where artificial intelligence could perfectly mimic non-verbal communication? If that is to say, if you could replace me with an artificial being that wasn't necessarily conscious, and it was able to mimic the same facial expressions and the same body language, what's to tell you that that thing is not actually as conscious as you? Because ultimately, how do you know I'm conscious? Is it not because I exhibit similar behavior to yourself and you believe yourself to be conscious? I don't know. If I'm wrong, please tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But, my microphone's not plugged in. Okay, so update. The logical next step in this was for me to plug my microphone in, even though I wasn't too dissatisfied with the audio quality of the previous segment, but what have you, we need to keep the microphone gimmick going, right? So if AI was able to perfectly mimic me and you could replace me in the night, how would you know that it was AI, firstly? And secondly, if you worked out it was AI, how would you know that it's not conscious? On what basis would you have? What basis would you have to make the judgment that it's not conscious? Because it's artificial? I mean, fair enough. If we define consciousness as being a thing that has to be inherently artificial, then right, by definition, AI can never be conscious. I don't remember what I just said there, but if I said it wrong, it may be the opposite in the sense that I'm essentially, yeah, if consciousness is defined as being a thing which cannot be artificial or man-made, it must occur naturally, then logically, can we really have artificial intelligence unless we construct artificially a lab in which we can reproduce the abiogenesis and the creation of life naturally? Then the question is that natural or not? And you get into semantics and realize that language is a limiting human construct as well. So, if anything, language certainly isn't conscious because it's artificial in a lot of ways. So there you go. Under second header, and this is the thing that it is starting to scare me, our development of AI, frankly. Not because I think that AI is ever going to be like the Terminator movies where it just takes control of us and, it just kills us or dominates us and exterminates us. I don't think it's necessarily going to get to the point where it's like, hey, it makes the most sense to wipe out humans because, we're causing the most damage on the earth. I mean, it might. But what I'm more genuinely scared about, and I didn't used to have fear about AI. I was like, come on, that's silly, that's superstitious. It's just myths that it's going to be, a troubling thing. But what is scaring me about AI at the moment, that is where we're at, and to be fully clear, I don't believe it's conscious, partly because I don't believe it can perfectly mimic human consciousness yet. And I just don't believe it's conscious. I don't happen to believe that. But what is scaring me about AI where it currently is, in terms of things like, ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, and particularly AI art, is I don't think it's going to dominate us. I think it's integrating. And I think it's going to become human insofar as its capacity to work and produce art and things that have given humans meaning for a very long time and things that are massive parts of our lives. If that goes to AI, well, that sucks. And it's like, oh, well, we did this to ourselves. Our endless pursuit of knowledge and, learning is kind of, brought doom on us. And, well, maybe that was always going to be the case, just to ask H.P. Lovecraft. But yeah, if we get to a point where AI is like, it can produce art that is genuinely good, and I hate to say, but like what I hate most about AI art is the fact that I like some of it, and it's like, well, there's already struggling artists, and we have people who are able to just press buttons on a computer to produce art that, if we didn't know was created by an AI, in the same way that we might not know AI is conscious, if we didn't know it was created by AI, it might invoke the very same emotions we would get from looking at, I don't know, Vincent van Gogh's paintings. We like to believe that if it's not produced by something without a soul, if it's not produced by something with a soul, then, it can't impact our soul in the same way. I think that's sort of this belief we have. But I think that's an encouraging and positive belief, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. I mean, and that's the point AI is like currently at, and it's only getting better the more we use it, and we're using it a lot. And I don't have a big problem with, I don't have a lot of very strong positions on a lot of things, but in AI art specifically, I really do despise it, and I haven't been able to come to a point where I've been like, yeah, it's okay to create artificial intelligence art. You might call that intellectually disingenuous of me because, maybe I should be all for innovation, but that kind of innovation seems like that's just going to get us to WALL-E, where we're all just a bunch of like really fat, miserable people just like sitting on devices, looking at stuff on phones and not moving about. Yikes. Well, that's what I'm worried about. And I'm also worried about it taking our jobs. So I work in IT, and the other day I took a ticket off of hold and, called this person back, and I was like, right, update on the problem. Did the thing we did last time actually fix it? Did that troubleshooting work? And they were like, oh, just give me a call, we'll discuss it. Gave them a call, and they're like, yeah, it's actually been fixed. I'm like, oh, cool. And they're like, I spoke to Microsoft Copilot, and it gave them, I kid you not, I was looking at the same messages, and it gave them the same solution as what we did, except except it was produced by something that wasn't conscious. And so I jokingly posted a GIF in the Teams chat being like, lol, AI's taking our jobs, watch out. And it was just a Terminator with a gun. And that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's going to be like that. I don't think they're just going to have guns and kill us. I think there's more at stake than having some kind of thing to, some kind of enemy to overcome. I mean, at least that's an inspiring story. In this way, it's like, no, we ultimately, where technological progression is going, the trajectory it's on, it's like it's fundamentally born of a desire to avoid work, which is fine. Like, make things easy. I think smart, not hard, right? That's where technology comes from in the, Industrial Revolution. And that has happened so dramatically quickly, and it's still happening so quickly. It's coming to the point where ultimately, is there going to be a need for humans to do anything if AI can do that job better and faster and more effectively? And if AI is getting to a point where it can produce art that quickly, and yet art is something we don't want to have taken from us. Art isn't something we want to outsource to a robot. Art is something that we want, dare I say, need to produce. It's one of those things that makes us human, in a sense, like that differentiates us from a lot of animals, is like we create things. And if AI can learn to create things better than us, then is it just going to perhaps not just integrate amongst us, but replace us? That's probably more so my fear. I'd be really curious to hear what you have to say about that. On a more concrete example from my personal experience, yeah, you're gonna look at me funny for saying this, but I used ChatGPT in the past when perhaps I should have sought therapy, and I sought information and advice on a particular situation I found myself in, and it was complex, and I wanted something that could listen and that wasn't sort of going to judge and just provide me with useful information. And it synthesized it very well, and it provided a great summary of essentially a lot of different concepts in psychology and in therapy and whatnot, that gave me a pretty practical way of approaching this problem that I listened to and has helped me a lot. And I hate that in a lot of ways. I hate that came from ChatGPT. It's like, well, how many psychologists are we going to be putting out of work because of ChatGPT, for instance? I used to want to be a psychologist. I'm really fascinated with psychology. And, I think it's a great aspiration to have, to help people overcome the challenges we face in our mental world, which comprises a lot of our world and who we are. And just in so doing, by engaging in that, I'm also training it to be better and better at its job, by giving it feedback, by leaving a thumbs up on the message in ChatGPT, all of that. So it's like, okay, well, I've already sort of established examples in my own life where, someone's job in IT has been slightly compromised by Microsoft Copilot, and where perhaps a therapist's job has been slightly compromised by the summation of advice out there accessible in the world to ChatGPT.